So I anticipate a little bit of background music in this video. I hope it is tolerable. So let's begin by imagining like you're in a situation where, or not you, but imagine a situation where like a team of Navy SEALs or some type of elite strike force is going to go kill a terrorist. They're going to raid a terrorist compound and kill a terrorist. And they can sit down before, and they will sit down before they do this, and they'll plan out everything. They'll look at maps of the compound, and they'll plan how they're going to execute it. There'll be layers and layers of contingency plans. If this goes wrong, then we do this. If that goes wrong, then we do this other thing. They can plan to death to do everything they can to make the mission a success. But in the military, there's something that I think it's called like the fog of war concept, where there's always that element of confusion, that element that cannot be planned for, that cannot be strategized, because it's totally like out of the realm of foreseeable outcomes and whatnot. It might be you get into the compound and a baby cries, and then a woman screams, and then a man runs, and then gunfire. Anything where at that moment, just events unseen will create an emotional situation that can't be planned for. And we'll call this like the fog of war. And drug relapses have this fog of war concept in them, in that no matter how well one strategizes and plans a controlled relapse, plans everything exhaustively, layers and layers of contingency plans for any foreseeable things that could go wrong. There still can and will be things that are either the way that you react emotionally to things, or the way that your emotions respond to the drug intake and whatnot. It's impossible to plan a controlled relapse perfectly. So we begin, and that this is the story of my relapse from last summer. So, and please watch my video about the unholy trinity of relapse conditions before, so that you can kind of get a bit of a setup for this. But yeah, so it was June of 2020, and I had made up my mind that I wanted to attempt a controlled relapse. After 4 years away from opiates, I wanted to attempt a controlled relapse. And believe me, I sat down. This wasn't spur of the moment thing. I sat down and I strategized this a lot. Like, I won't go into it, but I joked that I planned it like a high-stakes bank robbery. I really put some effort into this. And so what I came up with, now people who have watched a lot of videos on my channel know that in the year 2016, the winter of 15 into the spring of 16, I was homeless, down and out, addicted to heroin in Baltimore, Maryland. I know Baltimore very well. I know the geography of it. I know where the drugs are sold. I know how the open air game works. I know which drugs are there and whatnot, or at least, I knew as of a couple of years ago. So this knowledge, coupled with kind of a nostalgic recall. I mean, we use the term euphoric recall, but there's also nostalgic recall to visit a city where I once experienced the ups and downs. So I made up my mind, and again, in stupid drug addict, rationalizing, I thought, relapsing in another state would just be another layer of safeguard on this. So I had a week of vacation from my job, and I took a Greyhound bus out to Baltimore. And I mean, I planned everything. Like, I had Narcan with me. I even to the point where, like, I was considering placing an ad on Craigslist for like a private nurse to follow me around for the duration of the couple of days, but I didn't do that because it would be just too awkward. But yeah, so you know, reserved very nice Airbnbs in Baltimore because I was still making good money at my job at the time. So I was able to afford a luxurious, if we want to use that term, controlled relapse. And I ended up getting to Baltimore, and what I had decided to do, because again, like it's been 4 years, like I didn't really know, what the city's drug game was like in the year 2020. I knew that it was probably almost all fentanyl, but I knew from the old days where the heroin, the good, like what they'll call raw heroin, was sold in that city, like which suburbs were, where to go and everything. So my plan was to hit the ground and essentially strike up conversations with panhandlers until I found one who seemed to have their wits to them, and then just kind of leverage the situation with the money that I had and whatnot. So once I got to Baltimore, I ended up going to the infamous North Avenue of Baltimore, which is the main east and west road that runs slightly above the city, and there's a lot of drug moving up and down that road. And if anyone watched my old videos on this channel about panhandling in Baltimore, it all took place along North Avenue at a particular intersection on North Avenue. So I literally did just that. I walked up to the intersection where I used to panhandle in Baltimore, and that was going to be my starting point for striking up conversation with the current panhandlers. And so I remember walking down the road, kind of go under this bridge, and then once you come out from under the bridge, you see the intersection. And I'm walking under this bridge, nervous anticipation, like who's going to be there? Is it going to, you don't know. Like a lot of panhandlers are crazy, especially the ones doing it for crack money. There's just a lot of, it's very unpredictable. So I come under the tunnel and I see the intersection, and I kid you not, it was like, and I say this and it sounds cheesy, but it was love at first sight. Come out from under that table, and so we're going to introduce her. Her name, we'll call her Baltimore Jenny. I went through a period of my life for like 2 years where it was like every freaking woman I met was named Jenny. It was very strange. But yeah, so Baltimore Jenny. I see Baltimore Jenny. I approach Baltimore Jenny. Baltimore Jenny was probably about 45 or so, and she was roughened by homelessness and whatnot, but she was an attractive woman, and most importantly, Baltimore Jenny had her wits to her. Let me put it this way, like she was one of those women that, like, if she were interviewed, like interview with homeless drug addict, and she gave an interview, like a ton of people would be moved emotionally, and she would get a lot of like sympathy and everything, a lot of you're better than this type comments. Like she was the real deal. So I approach Baltimore Jenny, and I'm walking up to Baltimore Jenny, and I look at her, and she's looking at me, and I just kind of look at her, and again, this is like a weird thing. It's almost like a weird type of power tripping, where it's like it's almost like a pay it forward kind of thing. That really, like that stupid movie Pay It Forward, really is, because like I remember panhandling, and every once in a while, like you would get spoiled to an extent. So I walk up to Baltimore Jenny, and I look at Baltimore Jenny, and I just say, "Come with me. Just come with me." And I guess I said it in a way that was confident or didn't give her the creeps or anything. She did just that. She just, turned around and walked up and started following me. And I basically told her the deal. I used to be out here, Jenny. Like, I used to be out here. I used to be you. not you anymore, but I'm here as a tourist, and I'm putting my trust in you to get me what I want. And she basically gave me the gist of things, which was that like everything is freaking fentanyl. She had a couple contacts that might potentially be able to get, what I was after, but in the meantime, like it was just all going to be fentanyl. And I knew I knew that the first taste was probably going to be some type of fentanyl combination, fentanyl and I don't know, not heroin, but yeah. So Baltimore Jenny. Now Baltimore Jenny, she was homeless, and the place that Baltimore Jenny lived. Now in Baltimore, there's like this sharp racial divide in certain parts of the city where it's literally like you'll go on like one street is like $1 million homes of whites, and then 2 streets over is like ghetto, and it's all minorities. And Jenny lived in the abandoned basement of an apartment building that was, yeah, like rich white people. So just imagine like a 6-story apartment building, like an old brick building, but like with nice, nice units inside. And kind of just like this hollowed out abandoned basement. She just in the corner, she had a little mattress there and her setup and everything. And I guess nobody bothered her. I guess the landlord actually knew she was down there. The maintenance people knew she was down there and just nobody bothered her. So we go into her basement. After procuring a bit of delights for us, a bit of crack and a bit of, fentanyl. And so I'm sitting with Baltimore Jenny in her basement abode, and we're just smoking crack and talking. She's very together, like surprisingly together, which makes it sadder because like whenever it's always sad. I mean, people who lose their minds out there it's sad in a different way. But yeah, so we're talking, we're smoking and whatnot, and we then, after I'm getting a little bit paranoid after smoking a little too much, I decide to snort some of the fentanyl. And I snorted a little bit, and like nothing really happened. So I'm sitting there and I'm talking to her some more, and nothing's really happening. So I do another little half a capsule, and then all of a sudden everything gets super, super weird. And my next memory is like sitting there across from Baltimore Jenny and like just looking around, remembering where I am, remembering what's going on. I'm in this very foggy mindset. And then I put 2 and 2 together and realized what had happened. Baltimore Jenny had in fact hit me with Narcan up the nose. Having that Narcan was a blessing. So I'm looking around, and like it was the weirdest thing because when you get Narcan, it's just it's random in the sense that sometimes it's excruciatingly painful, precipitated withdrawal, just very, very painful. And sometimes like you don't even feel like anything happened. I mean, you feel a little bit, but and I was fortunate in the sense that after Baltimore Jenny hit me with the Narcan, like I didn't feel any of the bad effects of the Narcan. I just felt disoriented and confused. So like I'm almost in like this weird like pseudo euphoric state of realizing that I dodged the Narcan bullet. And then I actually looked at Baltimore Jenny, and that's when everything fell apart. I looked at Baltimore Jenny, and the expression on her face was my fog of war moment. She looked absolutely terrified. She was crying. She was trembling. What had transpired, her having to use the Narcan on me and whatnot, it really messed our poor little girl up. And just to kind of put this in context, like, Baltimore Jenny knew that I had several $100s of cash on me. Had phone, had keys to an Airbnb, or a code in my phone, I should say, to an Airbnb. And I was out cold. And all she did was apply the Narcan and bring me back. Like, there was the idea, like, 9 out of 10 junkies, and I'm sorry, I'm being disparaging a little bit, but, let's be real here, would have ran my pockets and ran out of there. Maybe ran my pockets, hit me with the Narcan, and then took off. She just stayed there. And as soon as, she stopped trembling, I just kind of looked at her, and again, it was the fog of war moment. This is when the controlled relapse completely went off plan. Very early, shall we say. I was not prepared to see her cry like that. I mean, this was authentic, very, raw. It just all bad. So here I am, how the tables have turned. I meet Baltimore Jenny. My intention is to pay it forward, bring her with me. Baltimore Jenny, you're going to get to do a lot of free drugs for the next day or two. Baltimore Jenny, you can have a shower in my Airbnb. Baltimore Jenny, this is going to be... And how quickly the tables turned to Baltimore Jenny, I'm going to make you cry and tremble. And the complete reversal of power. All I could do was look at her and be like, I'm sorry. It's probably best if I leave now. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Thank you for helping me. But it was just awkward because, she, obviously, she, being in her situation, despite being obviously affected in a very bad way by what I had done to myself, she didn't want me to leave because, let's face it, she wants to spend a day or two with me, and with all of the benefits and whatnot that would entail. So it was almost like she, had her get it together moment, and she said, no, don't leave, just don't do as much next time. I'm already at 18 minutes, so I'll just kind of wrap this up a little bit. But yeah, so I ended up spending the next it would have been the next 36 hours partying with Baltimore Jenny. And it was, for what it was worth, it was a good time. But yeah, it went off course so quickly because I had planned for the fact that I might overdose and be brought back. But I had not planned whatsoever for the emotional toll that might take on the person having to bring me back. So yeah, I ended up being in Baltimore for 2.5 days. Came back to Columbus and actually didn't use for about another week. It'll be another video. So was that a successful controlled relapse? I lasted a week after I got back. Obviously not, because after that week, I had found it in my home city, and the first time that I found it and did it in my home city the next week was the first day of doing it for about 6 months straight. So yeah, that's the That's the story of the controlled relapse, Baltimore Jenny, and the fog of war.